Hello everyone, we are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince!
And today, Vince, we're going to not talk about anything related to what you just did.
That's right. We're going to growl at each other.
You can
walk around in a circle.
You couldn't save that for Halloween.
Nope.
Alright,
it was time.
Today, Vince and I are going to talk about a topic that we came up with together, and we'd like to talk today about one-shots and standalone stories in comic books, and about how we feel like there aren't as many of them anymore, and that's what we're talking about today. So I'm putting 10 minutes on the clock, and here we go. So Vince, let me just ask you this. Generally, month to month, when you got your pull list, what kind of stories in comics do you generally prefer? Like, do you like monthlies? Do you like minis? What kinds of things do you usually prefer to read?
I prefer contained stories. I prefer stories that don't just go on and on and on. And so therefore, I really feel like the miniseries is becoming a lost art. I mean, no, it still exists, and
I was going to say, Marvel and DC both are kind of plugging out a lot of minis right now.
And I mean, like, if you were to go back 2 years ago, you'd hardly find a miniseries that was from anything other than Image or Dark Horse. I just feel like there's this, like, for example, Hellboy has never been 100% chronologically ordered. It's been, here's this series, and I want to tell the story that happened here, and here's a story that happened at this point in his life, and the readers just accept it and say, I understand that has not happened yet. So they can, it's like you make prequels, you make sequels. It doesn't necessarily have to be all one big assembly line.
Well, you know what's great about that versus some monthlies is that every time one of those comes out, you can be sure that whether it's great or not great, Mignola had a story to tell. Or whoever's writing. The problem with monthlies, and this isn't to say that I don't like traditional monthly comic books, but one of the difficulties with them, and I think mostly what we want to talk about here is kind of the pros and cons of the different types of formats. What's tough about writing a monthly is that you're going to have filler months. There's no way around it. You're going to have months where that story, where there's going to be either a one and done story that's just kind of lame, or where there's like that kind of fill-in issue where it has to do with the stuff that's been going on, but it's not up to par because we didn't have enough time to really work it out. Whereas if you're just putting out minis each time you have a story, I mean, you've got directors like Nolan who always likes to say, I won't make a movie unless I know I've got a story to tell. Mm-hmm. And I think you've got that with guys like Mignola who refuse to make, even though Hellboy, a pretty major property for Dark Horse, but by God, he won't make it just a regular monthly comic book.
I will say that, and I'm not going to sit here and just kiss the feet of Dark Horse, although that might be what it sounds like I'm going to do. But Hellboy and BPRD and Conan and these type of things, they have books that come out regularly that you might think that they're monthlies. There is a monthly Conan book right now. There has been monthly Conan books in the past. For the last, I forget how many months, maybe a year, Conan has not been a monthly. And then Brian Wood's came out. But there are so many Conan books that do come out that people will, like, there was a comic book store in KC here, Overland Park rather, that they would be willing to consider that a poll if you just put Conan titles. They would consider that a monthly book. Why? Because there's loads of them. They come out pretty regularly. So all I'm saying is that I like it when you can have a story that has a point, that has point A to point B, rising and falling action. And I feel like if you have an ongoing series, they tend to forget that. It's kind of just walking the line.
Well, but there's of course a lot of different ways to do monthly series. And talking about Dark Horse, I want to talk about Buffy for a second because Buffy and Angel and Faith both running congruently right now are really interesting because their monthlies right now, but they've got a cap-off point. I mean, they work like seasons of television, so they're going 25 issues, I think is the number, and then they're finished with that season, and then they take a break, and then they come back. So it's like a maxi series, it's just longer, but I mean, like, they plan them, I mean, like the writers of those books sit down with Whedon at the beginning of the year year whenever they make them, and they kind of hash out what the story arc's going to be for the season, and then they make the 25 issues. So they don't have that problem. They don't have to worry about goofy, silly fill-in issues and things like that. They've got a plan, and I think it's all about having a plan. But there's a couple different ways to do monthlies. You've got the way that you're kind of talking about, where you just have to keep plugging away at it, whether you've got a story or not. But then you've got like creative teams where you put a team on it, they've got their story to tell, they kind of know where they're going with it. When they're done, somebody else takes over, and it's like it's a new book now, except it's the same character. Or you have what I kind of wanted to make this video primarily about, what you used to have that you don't have as much, where you might have a book where it's monthly, but they're either one and done stories or they're 2-3 issue arcs, like Superman Batman was, where it was kind of an anthology book. You had different teams on it every month, and it was a monthly title, but they each got to tell their own stories, and it was, what would these guys do with Superman and Batman? What would these guys do with Superman and Batman? And I loved that, and I missed that. DC had that one book. I did this. DC had that one. Captain Logan, not a mathematician. Well, that one book, and then New 52 happened, and now they don't have anything like that. And I mean, like, I guess they're doing DC Universe Presents, but that's still like longer story arcs with different characters. So,
I like miniseries. That's just because a miniseries to me has a point. Now, one of my big pet peeves, especially in a movie or even in a miniseries, I guess, is a character who is not working towards something. If you spend any given, whether it's 20 minutes or 10 pages, where a character is walking around just trying to figure out what to do. And when I say trying to figure, I don't mean necessarily trying to figure something out, because that could be interesting. A murder mystery. Well, he's trying to figure something out.
Right.
But a guy who is trying to figure out what to do, just to show you some kind of action, that's a problem, and that's what a lot of filler is. It's, well, I'm going to go to Aunt May's house and make sure that she has that pie that she ordered from Amazon because she's crazy. And then I'm going to go see Mary Jane, who is apparently not married to me, but is, and I don't care anymore because I haven't been reading the book.
And is she an actress? Is she a model? What is she?
Does she model actresses? Get the clay just right. But, that's kind of where I'm coming from, is that you've got to have a plan. You have to have a plan when you walk into things, otherwise I find it ultimately uninteresting. I feel like Conan right now is slightly uninteresting, because there's not a...
meandering along.
Yeah. You feel like he's going to hit a groove, and like, oh, there's the story, and then he cuts it off and goes somewhere else. Like, well, thanks, I guess we're just wandering around Conan's land.
Don't you feel like, ultimately it ends up being the difference between, I've got a story to tell, and I'm making a product that people are buying, versus I'm making a product people are buying, and I gotta kind of make them think I'm telling a story so that they'll buy it. Like, I think those are two very different things, right? Where, and especially when you can tell that maybe a writer has kind of a plan, but they're telling it in way more issues than they'd have to, just because they're trying to stay on it as long as they can stay on it. I mean, sometimes I feel like, and this is a different topic entirely, but I just want to touch on this for a second. Every now and again, I feel like you get a writer that is kind of afraid maybe they're going to lose their book, and so they stretch it, and they're like, no, please, Marvel, don't take me off this book, because I still have more story to tell. I'm not even thinking of anyone in particular, but sometimes I get that vibe from different books.
I get that vibe too. In my head, I'm like, don't quit your day job. I'm like, tell the story you need to tell, leave an awesome mark, and then maybe they'll come back and hire you for something else.
And then some people, like, JMS on Spider-Man, apparently, I've not read that, but I mean, people always say great things about JMS's run. He had several trades worth, and they were, several different stories in a row. Some people have enough in them that they can keep going for a long time, and you don't mind it. I mean, come on. Bendis was on Ultimate Spider-Man from the beginning, and still is, and a lot of us really like that book. So, that's an ongoing story that has a lot of little stories in it, and it, for the most part, stays interesting.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you cannot be interesting if you keep the same creative team, or if you don't tell little mini stories. Ultimate Spider-Man is a terrific example. Here's the deal. Ultimate Spider-Man has largely been told in 6-issue runs. So, I don't...
Not anymore! But right.
Until, basically, after Ultimatum hit, the whole Ultimate Marvel Universe was ruined. But the Bendis run, he tells, here's the origin, okay, here's the next step, okay, and here's what happens when this guy comes, okay, and then he just keeps stacking stories on top. So he says, here's a point, here's what I want to do with this story arc, so he comes up with a story arc. And that's why we call them arcs, is because it's not just a constant stream of things that happen in a person's life. I almost feel like Walking Dead is a constant stream of things happening, but you can cut it off. I mean, the trades are very self-contained things. They make sense unto themselves, provided you understand the situation, the scenario. And then, of course, there are things that they allude to. But I am only really interested in things that if you cut it off at 3 or 4 or 5 issues or 6 issues, that it makes sense. Or if you have a maxi series, if it's a 12-issue series, I mean, it makes sense that you would want to cut something off at some point. Because I just get annoyed. I get so frustrated with the comic book industry when it's just things happening, and I cannot abide things happening. The dude may abide.
I hate it when things are happening.
Happen.
Well, and again, I think that a lot of the reason that you get so that you know, you and I and everybody else get so frustrated about that is because it's about them getting our money and less about us getting our entertainment. Here's the bottom line for me. This would be my final thoughts on this. I want to see more variety in storytelling. That's all I'm asking for. I miss What If. I miss Elseworlds. I miss those kinds of stories. I'm not saying that necessarily I need a bunch of stories like we have with What If and Elseworlds that are all outside of continuity that are one-and-dones, but on the other hand, that was a great format for that. Because with the What Ifs, you could go back to stories that people had read before, and it was okay that it was only in one issue because you could kind of gleam over things, and you could go because it was kind of a mission statement, right? It was like okay, the point is to explore what would happen if this happened differently. You know, if Peter Parker kept his 6 arms, if you know, if he married Black Cat, you know, all the different what if stories. If you're not familiar with What If, most of them were 1, sometimes 2 issue stories. And they worked really well because, like I said, you could go back to something that a lot of us knew already, and you could kind of gloss over certain parts so you could tell the important parts of it. But Elseworlds was great for that too because you know, over in DC, because you could kind of do like, I mean, most of those were a little bit longer, you know, 30, 35, 40 pages, some of them. And again, you just kind of go, okay, we take this character and we say, you know, what would happen if they were a little bit, you know, if they were different, if they had this other kind of thing going on. Let's say, you know, what if we took Batman and we made him Superman, and then what would that be like, and stuff like that. But anyway, I miss those kinds of stories because they were imaginative, they were self-contained, and they stuck with me more than a lot of really long stories for whatever reason. So I guess I'm just saying I kind of miss those. And Marvel still does, you know, one-shots every so often, but a lot of them seem to be kind of humorous one-shots. So, I mean, which is fine, you know. But anyway, so that's what I have to say about that.
I think you really hit the nail on the head. Creative storytelling. I think that's really the point that we're driving at here, is that when I say you have to have a plan when you start, I mean, it's not creative to just sit there and keep railing at nothing. Shouting into the wind. That's what I like to call it. Well, I like to call it something else, but I'm not going to say that on Geekvolution. So, you know, it's not necessarily that they don't create anything that's self-contained, or that they don't create any stories that aren't self-contained, because obviously Ultimate Spider-Man is going for a long time. And I think the problem is that they consider their big crossover events, those core books that only last between 8 and 12 issues. I think.
And who can blame them? They sell. I mean, it is a business, you know. I'm not begrudging them that. I mean, you know, it's a business, and you've gotta make what sells. At least if you have to do that, make the events good.
I just think that they start focusing on those events and forgetting that the books should have arcs and ends to stories.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
So,
yeah.
There you go.
I love the comic book as a medium, man. I mean, like 20 to 28 pages, however long your book is. It's so hard to get a really great story in that few pages. It's a fantastic challenge, and when somebody can manage it, it's freaking gold. And that's what I love about it. You know, it's you can get such creativity out of people by limiting them like that. And it's a bit of a cheat not to have enough of that coming out.
In my head, if you're going to make a filler issue, if you're going to make a writer write a fluff piece, you might as well just throw that issue to somebody else and say, okay, do what you can.
Yeah.
Because surely they have an idea in their head.
Which happens. But not all the time. Well, anyway, hey, thanks everybody for watching Geeks Not Nerds. If you have an idea for a future video, leave that in the comments below, and we'll see you again next week. I'm Captain Logan. Rawr!
I'm Vince.
And we'll see you next time.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's all right.
I recommend that you go to your local monster store.